Hi, Mike here. Today I'm going to be doing the full card predictions and breakdown for UFC 320 taking place this weekend, headlined by Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira. If you'd like a breakdown of a specific fight, the timestamps will be in the comment section below. But starting off with the early prelim opener, we got Veronica Hardy versus Brogan Walker. I'm going to go with Veronica Hardy. I think that this is going to be a pretty close fight. I think it's going to be like a 29-28 decision for both of them, but both of these women fight pretty similar. They're both sort of on the back foot a lot of the time, throwing a couple of pitter-patter shots here and there. Neither of them get a lot of finishes, not a lot of submissions from either. But I think Veronica's more well-rounded. For two people who have like a pretty similar fight style, I usually go for the one that's a little bit more well-rounded. And Veronica Hardy shoots takedowns sometimes, and Brogan Walker has terrible takedown defense. So I think in this fight, most of the fight, Brogan's going to be losing on the feet, maybe only just, probably a few strikes down from Veronica Hardy. And then Veronica at the end of the rounds will probably be able to shoot a takedown, winning most of the rounds, winning like a 30-27, 29-28 type decision. Moving on to the next one, we've got Ramiz Brahimaj versus Austin Vanderford. I'm actually pretty excited for this fight. I think Austin Vanderford's actually quite underrated. He has good wins, and his losses aren't that bad. People talked about him before coming into the UFC like he was going to be the chinniest fighter on the roster. But his losses are to guys like Aaron Jeffrey and Gegard Mousasi, given Gegard was like 40 years old, so that's not the best look, and he did get put down by a jab. They're still not the worst losses. Aaron Jeffrey as well is quite a good fighter. He's got a couple of good wins on his record. But Austin Vanderford's got very good chain wrestling. If you've watched his fights, he actually does chain his takedowns together very nicely. He works well off the cage. He's got great grappling. He's got really good ground and pound. He finished Nikolai Veretennikov in his last fight by ground and pound. And he actually did a really impressive job controlling Veretennikov, who we saw has decent grappling against Francisco Prado the next fight afterwards. So it was pretty impressive that he was able to ground and pound Veretennikov to a win. And the thing is about Ramiz Brahimaj is that he's been out-grappled a fair few times. A guy like Themba Gorimbo was able to take him down almost at will whenever he needed. And the thing is that Ramiz Brahimaj, he is very powerful. So if you're looking to bet on him, betting by TKO over Austin Vanderford's not a bad bet. But the thing is that Ramiz Brahimaj, he's just not consistent enough for me to pick him by TKO or pick him to win the fight even. Like, the guys that he's beating is like a Mickey Gall, who was like a 7-6 record, or like who did he win last time out? It was a Billy Ray Goff, who he got into like a really easy guillotine. So I don't think he's going to be able to get that easy of a win against Austin Vanderford. And I think that Austin Vanderford's going to be able to get his grappling going and either get a submission or a decision. I'm going to lean towards submission, maybe in like early of the third round, just because I think Ramiz will be able to defend the takedowns early. He does actually have all right takedown defense, but it's just the fact that he's so small. Every time on the reshot, he usually gets taken down. Like against Themba Gorimbo almost the entire fight. It was just Themba would shoot the takedown, he wouldn't get it instantly, they would hold up against the fence, and Themba would be able to muscle him down to the ground. And I think that Austin Vanderford's going to be able to follow that similar type game plan against Ramiz Brahimaj, and I think he's going to get a third round submission. Moving on to the next fight, this is where it starts getting pretty exciting. This is Punahele Soriano versus Nikolai Veretennikov. I'm going to go with Punahele Soriano and by KO in the second round. Punahele's very, very powerful, and he's getting a lot better in his career. He's always shown pretty decent wrestling and pretty good ground and pound, and he's pretty tough. He's taken a few beatings in the middleweight division. But the thing is in this fight is that I think he's just going to be miles ahead of Veretennikov on the ground, and I think he's going to be so much stronger than Veretennikov. Because Veretennikov's quite technical. He's pretty good. He's got good sweeps on the bottom. He's got good reversals. He's actually a very technically sound fighter. But in his last fight against Francisco Prado, which he did win a pretty good decision against, he was getting out-muscled at points by Francisco Prado. And it's like, we know Francisco Prado. We know how big he is. We know that he's like an overblown bantamweight in the welterweight division with just like a heavyweight-sized head. That's like the only reason he's in the welterweight division. But to get out-muscled by Francisco Prado is a really bad look, especially coming up against a guy who used to be at middleweight. So I just can't see Veretennikov really having too much success, especially in the grappling aspect against Punali Soriano. I almost forgot his name for a second there. But Veretennikov, although he's good, his decision-making is also terrible. He has like really nice knees and clinch work, but then he never really uses it. He's got great body work, but he never really uses it. Like in his last fight against, again, Francisco Prado, he was just spinning wheel kicking with no like reaction from it, or no like, he never hurt Prado with it, so there was no point in going back to the well with it, and he kept getting taken down off it, and he would just keep going with it. Makes no sense, and he would hurt Prado with like body shots, and then follow him up with like a bunch of headshots. So I do know that his decision making is questionable, and one thing people love to talk about Extreme Couture and how their fighters are getting worse. But one thing that you have to say about Extreme Couture fighters is that they usually don't do stuff like that. They're usually not just doing the same thing, or actually I say that and I just remember Daniel Zellhuber against Michael Johnson, but they usually, unless their name is Daniel Zellhuber, they usually make good decisions, and I think that Punali Soriano is going to be the guy making the better decisions in this fight. I think I can see Soriano going for some big winging overhands, and maybe Veretennikov at the same time is going for a leg kick and gets flatline KO'd. Like, I can just see that sort of exchange happening, where Veretennikov is going for the wrong strike in the wrong moment in the wrong distance, where Punali Soriano is just able to take all of that and just give it way better and just knock out Veretennikov. I think he's going to flatline KO him in the second round. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Patchy Mix versus Jacob Wiklax. This is actually a pretty exciting fight. This is probably in the top 5 most exciting fights for me on this card. Just because I've been watching a lot of Jacob Wiklax over the last year or so, just because I've been notified that KSW is actually getting a fair few good prospects, and Wiklax was one of them. And he is a very good fighter, but I'm going to be picking Patchy Mix to get this one done, and I think he's going to get it done by submission. Just because the thing is about Jacob Wiklax is, although he is a bit of a submission guy himself, I look at him like a less polished version of Patchy Mix, and that's a weird thing to say when Patchy Mix got brutally schooled in his last fight against Mario Bautista, but I don't think that that's a bad thought, just because they both fight very similarly. But Patchy gets dropped less, he gets hit a little bit less, apart from his Bautista fight. And he also has a higher percentage of submission rate. Like, his submissions come through a lot more regularly than Wiklax. So I just think he's a better version of Jacob Wiklax. Neither guy finishes guys on the feet. Patchy Mix has got a couple of finishes. He got a knee over Raffion Stotts, which is actually a pretty good win. Jacob Wiklax genuinely has no finishes on the feet, so I think that Patchy Mix is probably going to be the more comfortable guy there, maybe the more powerful guy as well. I think that this is probably going to be a masterclass from Patchy Mix, if I'm going to be honest. I think Jacob Wiklax, all of the stuff that he does well, Patchy does better. And let's say Jacob Wiklax goes for a takedown. Patchy Mix is going to jump on that guillotine. Let's say Patchy Mix goes for a takedown. Jacob Wiklax is probably going to jump on that guillotine, but Patchy's probably going to get out of it. That's the thing. I'm looking at both of these guys, and with such a mirror style, and I just think that Patchy's going to be the cleaner guy. He's going to be the better guy. But I will say, though, watching Patchy Mix's fights, again, I rewatched a bunch of them before making this prediction, and they are really bad fights. Like, he's literally, all of his fights are just him and his opponent standing at range, throwing one strike per minute, usually like a jab or a leg kick, or they'll just miss punches every 20 seconds, and it's just a really bad look when you're coming into the UFC with a bunch of performances, a bunch of 5-rounders that looked exactly like that. And the thing is that Jacob Wiklax, his fights that he's had in KSW have been a bit more competitive, a bit more scrappy, people getting hurt, dropped here and there. So that could show that he's more gritty than Patchy Mix. It could show that he can work through the pain a little bit more, get finishes against guys who are a bit more scrappy. But what I think it shows is that they're just not on the same level as the guys that Patchy Mix is fighting, especially like the Juan Archuletas, the Raffion Stotts, the Magomedovs. These guys are actually quite skilled fighters. And I think I'm looking at Jacob Wiklax's opponents, and I'm looking at them being like, maybe these guys are just like really not on that level. But just because KSW's bantamweight division as well is known to be one of their weaker divisions, So it's a pretty hard pick though, just because you can't really, like, I'm saying all these things about Jacob Wicklax, how he might not be the best guy out there, especially for KSW. But then again, Patchy Mix and Bellator have been proven time and time again that it's the B-level promotion. So you never know, Jacob Wicklax could come out here and submit Patchy Mix, but I just don't see it. I think Patchy Mix is going to be able to outstrike Jacob Wicklax. I think he might be able to hurt him here and there, maybe with a knee, maybe with the counter hook. I think it's probably more likely the counter hook just because Jacob Wicklax comes into range chin first every time, and he gets dropped in a lot of fights. But I think the Patchy Mix is going to be able to maybe club and sub him, drop him with a right hand, maybe like a right hook over the top, and then jump on that guillotine, getting it. Because the thing is that Wicklax has been put in a necktie by the guy that he fought like 5 times. I think his name was like Pruzbzy. I wish I knew how to pronounce any of these Polish names, but whatever that guy's name was, you know it if you've seen Jacob Wicklax's record. He fought him literally 5 times across his career. But that guy was able to drop him. He was able to put him in a Peruvian necktie. He was able to do, like, I think he was able to hurt him in the first fight of theirs. He was able to finish him with body shots. Like, I've seen a lot of moments of weakness from Jacob Wicklax, and I think that Patchy Mix is going to be skilled enough to be able to poke holes in those weaknesses and get a submission, maybe in the first round after hurting Jacob Wicklax. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Macy Chasson versus Yana Santos. I'm going to go with Macy Chasson, and this is probably the biggest lock of the card for me. Yana Santos, she did look good against Miesha Tate earlier this year, but Miesha Tate's 41 years old and she's not looked like she's been in her prime for the last 5 years. And Chasson, she lost her last fight to Ketlin Vieira, but it was a decent-ish performance. She showed a little bit more skills than Yana Santos did in her last fight against Miesha Tate. And I think that Chasson is just a much better fighter at this point in her career. She's a little bit younger, probably a bit bigger as well. She looks like a 145er as opposed to 135er. And Yana Santos just isn't at her best anymore. She's 35 years old. She's going to be a step behind in all the scrambles and on the feet. And I think I've got a new method of picking women's bantamweight fights. I've got like in usual like divisions, you've got like the unranked section and the ranked section. But for women's bantamweight, I've got you win against Carol Rosa or you lose against Carol Rosa. Because if you know Carol Rosa and you know ball, she's fought, I think, 12 times in the UFC, and she's got 12 decisions in a row, winning half of them, losing half of them. And if you're able to beat Carol Rosa, that means you're at the top of the division. You're in the top, 9 fighters in the bantamweight division. But if you lose to Carol Rosa, you are between the 10 and unranked section of the bantamweight division. It's like BC and AC, or BC and AC. Is that the before Christ, after Christ? Yeah. It's like that, but for the women's bantamweight division and for Carol Rosa as the benchmark. Just because Carol Rosa is a very good fighter. She's technically sound, but she doesn't have that X factor. All the fighters that have the X factor are able to beat her, and I would pick Macy Chasson to beat Carol Rosa 10 out of 10 times. So I think Chasson's going to be able to get this one done. I think she's going to be able to get it done by a 30-27 decision. I could also see some sort of TKO due to doctor stoppage, maybe another one like that, the Maria Bueno Silva cut, because Chasson is very slender, so she's got those sharp elbows and sharp knees. She can cut you very easily. I could see that in this fight, but I think it's going to be more so a decision win for Macy Chasson in this fight. Moving on to the next one, though, we've got Daniel Santos versus Ju Sang Yu. This is actually really exciting. I'm really excited for this fight. We've got the Korean Zombie Mark II, who's actually more of the Korean McGregor, versus Daniel Santos, one of the greatest fighters in the UFC. If you haven't seen Daniel Santos fights, they're actually really fun to watch, and I didn't really know too much about him before I started doing the research for this one. But he's a very good prospect. He's actually a very good fighter in his own right, and I'm surprised that they've actually made this fight. When I first saw Ju Sang Yu, I thought that they were going to give him the sort of McGregor treatment, the Alex Pereira treatment, where they sort of give you better matchups as you're coming up the division. I didn't think that they were just going to give him Daniel Santos, who's got good wins, who's only performed pretty well. He's beaten good guys like John Castaneda. Johnny Munoz Jr. is alright. Jong Yong Lee's alright. So he's got some pretty good wins in the UFC. So I'm surprised that he's coming up against Ju Sang Yu, who's actually a very touted prospect. One thing I'll say though, Ju Sang Yu's fights before the UFC did not impress me. And if you're fighting Jeka Saragi on your first fight, who I said coming into that fight is the worst fighter in the UFC, if you're coming up against him, you better believe that I want you to smoke him in 30 seconds. So I can't really take much from that fight. And Daniel Santos, he's got really good hands. He's got great pocket boxing. His movement's really good. His head movement's fantastic. His countering ability is good. He's also got really good time takedowns. And although his control on the mat isn't great, he doesn't seem to use those takedowns to control you down there, to do submissions down there. He seems to do it to sap your cardio tank because he's got a great gas tank himself. And I think he does it to give you more looks so his shots over the top land well. And I think that will bode well for him against Ju Sang Yu, a guy who holds his hands quite low. But Daniel Santos is a warrior. He constantly wants to do damage. He's always throwing multiple punch combinations. He's got really good body hooks as well. I do worry sometimes with his forward movement. He does have a blitz first style. And if Ju Sang Yu's the level that he looks, he might be able to counter him with a shot over the top, fully McGregor style counter. If he can do that against Daniel Santos, I'll be very, very impressed. But it is there and it is open if he's got the skills for it. But Santos is shown to be super durable. So I don't know even if that's going to work. He tanked massive head kicks from John Castaneda and wasn't even too rocked to out-scramble Castaneda seconds later. I will say he must have a deficiency for that because he got blasted the fight before that by Julio Arce with the exact same head kick. Maybe Ju Sang Yu's got that technical style, that technical kickboxing style on the feet to catch him with that head kick. But I don't think that he can. I think that that's going to be very difficult. And the thing is that Daniel Santos, he's looked better in his last few fights than he did in the Julio Arce fight, or he did against John Castaneda. He looked better in his last two, and I think that that's going to continue showing improvement against Ju Sang Yu. I think that the takedown attempts are going to give Ju Sang Yu some problems. He's already got his hands so low. So a guy who's got his hands already low, it's similar to the Merab versus O'Malley fights where O'Malley was so focused on the takedown that right hand over the top would land very well for Merab. I think the same thing's going to happen here. I think Daniel Santos is going to go for a bunch of takedowns early, and then later on in the fight, he's going to be able to fake that same takedown and land shots over the top. I don't think he finishes Ju Sang Yu, although he may be able to get him down and submit him if we don't know, because we don't really know his level of grappling. But I think he's going to be able to out-damage Ju Sang Yu to a decision where Ju Sang Yu is trying to look too technical on the feet, trying to be too clean. But then Daniel Santos is going to be landing body shots. He's going to be pushing him up against the cage, kneeing the thigh, doing a lot of gritty techniques against Ju Sang Yu. I can really see it. And I think he's going to be able to win a decision over Ju Sang Yu. Moving on to the next fight that we've got, Farid Basharat versus Chris Gutierrez. This has the capacity to be the most boring fight in human existence. I think it honestly could be really bad. It could be the least damage dealt in any matchup of all time. Even more so than Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. Maybe I'm taking the piss there. It's probably not going to be worse than that. But Farid Basharat versus Chris Gutierrez, you kind of got the smudge grappler versus the smudge striker, which is the weirdest thing to say because strikers are usually the more fun fighters. But Chris Gutierrez is genuinely the most smudge striker I've ever seen. When I hear of 29-28 Decision Fest, I think of a Carol Rosa fight. She's the perfect one to say for this. But it's actually a Chris Gutierrez fest. That's a real 29-28. Chris Gutierrez, every single fight looks the same. There's 3 takedowns shot, all defended. There's a couple of nice leg kicks here and there. There's a couple of nice straight shots here and there. But in between that, there's a lot of feinting. There's a lot of nothing at range. And I think that Farid Basharat's going to be able to deal with that. I think Farid Basharat's defense on the feet is going to be good enough to keep away that jab and the leg kick of Chris Gutierrez. And he's got decent kicks himself, does Farid Basharat, but he's really a one-shot at a time type guy. he likes to stay marginally ahead and just keep and sit on the lead. He is he's a winner type fighter where if he's established the lead, he's going to keep it. He's not going to try and push for a finish. He seems pretty durable so far, but he doesn't really seem to have like the facial structure of someone who's actually quite durable. But then again, Chris Gutierrez, unless you're a 49-year-old Frankie Edgar, he doesn't finish people like that. And even then, he finished he wasn't actually 49 years old, but he was really old, and it was with a knee coming in. So it was really always going to happen against Frankie Edgar. He had that style to eat a knee, like he was always coming forward head first, doing all that weird movement coming in. That was always going to happen to him, especially as he got slower. But against a Farid Basharat, that he's not going to finish him. And Basharat has very good wins over guys like Victor Hugo, Damon Blackshear, Taylor Lapillus, who, if you don't know him, is actually a very good fighter. He's still getting wins at the moment in the PFL. I think he's on a 3-fight winning streak. And he left the UFC on a 3-fight winning streak, I think, with wins over Cal Loughran, Cody Stamen, Carlos Vera. Carlos Vera is actually quite a good fighter as well. So Basharat's got some good wins, and I think he's going to be able to use that style to beat a guy like Chris Gutierrez. He really doesn't have that X factor, and I think he's going to be able to win, especially in the grappling. I think maybe some pitter-patter shots on the feet, and it's probably a 29-28 Gutierrez fest, but I think Farid Basharat's going to be able to outpoint him here and there, and also get a couple of takedowns here and there, winning a decision for the Basharat bros, finally getting them back on the win column. Moving on to the next fight that we've got, Edmund Shabazian versus Andre Muniz. This is a bit of a tough fight to predict for me, just because before Petrosky's last fight against Cam Roaston, I would have been really confident in the Shabazian pick, but after Petrosky got finished easily against Cam Roaston, who is a good striker, I'm a little bit more unsure. But then again, I was re-looking at it, and Andre Muniz got finished by ground and pound against Paul Craig only 2 years ago, and if you watch that fight, he was getting outstruck on the feet by Paul Craig. So I think that this is going to be an easy win for Shabazian. Muniz also got finished easily against Aliskerov, I think, earlier this year. I think it was like a counter hook that finished him, and it looked like a really small shot, if you remember that. And the thing is that I can't watch you get finished by that small of a shot, and then also watch you get outstruck by Paul Craig. And then also in your last win against the Jung Young Park, the Iron Turtle, I thought he lost that anyway. So his grappling looked good in the fight against Jung Young Park, but he was doing no damage in the fight. And I didn't see it as anything that Edmund couldn't deal with, especially since on the feet, Edmund doesn't really have anything to worry about against Andre Muniz. And even if Shabazian looked a bit mid against Petrosky, if he fights that same fight, he should be able to win this one. Just because Andre Muniz, he doesn't have the best of takedowns. It's not like he's a wrestler through and through. And I would say Petrosky's takedowns are probably somewhat similar of a success rate as Andre Muniz. And Petrosky had little to no success in the grappling with Edmund Shabazian. And although Edmund's not very active on the feet, he uses his speed well. He doesn't overextend on punches. He'll be able to focus on defending the takedowns first. And I think he's going to be able to outstrike Muniz to a decision win. Maybe even finishing him, but I think it's still going to be a decision. Probably looks quite similar to the Andre Petrosky fight. Moving on to the next one that we've got, Ataber Gautier versus Treston Vines. It was Ataber Gautier versus Ozzy Diaz, but I think that the result's going to be much the same. I'm going to go with Ataber Gautier by a first round KO. Treston Vines, I've watched a couple of his last fights. Every single time he's stepped up in competition, he's lost by first round KO. Even though he's on a 4-fight winning streak, I'm still going to pick him to lose by first round KO. It's a bit of a trend in his career. He always loses by first round KO if he comes up against a guy who's actually skilled. So it's going to happen in this fight. Even if he's on a 4-fight winning streak, those guys were very low-level guys. So Ataber Gautier is going to flatline KO him in the first 2 minutes of the fight, maybe the first minute of the fight. Moving on, though, to the next fight, the opener of the main card, we've got Joe Pyfer versus Abus Magomedov. This is going to be a really good fight between these two guys, but I'm going to say Abus is a live underdog, but I'm going to have to pick Joe Pyfer to win this one. The thing is that Abus's cardio is such a glaring hole that I really just can't ignore it. And you can say what you want about Pyfer, that he's low output this, that he doesn't throw more than one shot at a time, but his cardio is so much better than Abus Magomedov. Even though Hermansson beat him, and he beat him in the last few rounds, Joe Pyfer didn't look like Abus does in those last few rounds. Like, he actually didn't look that tired, even though he wasn't as explosive. If you watch Abus's fights, especially the Michel Pereira fight, there was like nothing happening in that first round. And then he looked like he had run a marathon when it came to those second and third rounds. It looks like it was just such a weird sight to see. And Joe Pyfer in those fourth and fifth rounds against Jack Hermansson wasn't nearly as tired as Abus Magomedov was in a second round, in a first round where they did nothing on the feet. I can't fathom or understand that at all. Like, how can you get that tired against the guy who's doing nothing, like nothing to you in the first round? It makes no sense. And I was rewatching the Hermansson versus Pyfer fight, and I figured out that the reason that he didn't really hit Hermansson that much was just because of all the odd movement, and Hermansson did a great job slipping under and doing some sort of diamond head movement against him, and it was working really well against Joe Pyfer. Abus does not do that at all. He barely moves his head off center line even when he's throwing punches. And in the Hermansson fight, Jack Hermansson was actually pushing the action against Joe Pyfer. I don't think Abus is going to be able to do that. I think he's going to be too nervous of getting flatline KO'd. I think Abus, if he wants to win this one, will have to wrestle early, but we've seen Pyfer's a good wrestler. He's had good grappling matches against a number of guys. And if Abus fought like Hermansson did, he'd be gassed out in 4 minutes of the fight. If he did all of that outside movement, if he did all that faking, if he did all of that pushing forward, he's going to get finished early if he does all of that, because that's just not the way he fights. He's very upright. He doesn't move that much. He doesn't move his head that much. And I think that this is screaming for a first round KO from Smokin' Joe Pyfer. And I think it's going to be vicious as well. But moving on to the next fight, we've got Josh Emmett versus Youssef Zalal. I think that this is a tough pick, and if I'm wrong, I'm going to look so dumb. But I think Youssef Zalal is getting a bit overrated here. He is a great fighter, I will give him that. But one win over Calvin Kattar does not impress me, especially after Steve Garcia's performance over Calvin Kattar. Steve Garcia was able to win that fight without running and putting a real beating on Calvin Kattar, whereas Zalal almost played tag with Kattar for 3 rounds. And when I watched Zalal versus Kattar, I watched Lerone Murphy versus Josh Emmett at the exact same time, just to compare the movement and the speed of all of these guys, just to give a better understanding of what skills they have and what the difference between their athleticism will be. But there is actually a stark difference between Josh Emmett and Calvin Kattar, and especially in the movement. You may remember the fight between the two of them where I even thought that Calvin Kattar beat Josh Emmett, but the difference is that Josh Emmett hasn't had multiple knee surgeries since then, and at this point in Emmett's career, compared to Calvin Kattar, he moves like a rabbit and Kattar moves like a wombat. It's like a very big difference in what their striking looks like, especially in their footwork. Especially since I always thought that Josh Emmett's footwork was underrated. He's very good at cutting the cage off. He's got good lateral movement. And Kattar always has sort of had a little bit worse movement than Josh Emmett, but especially in the Youssef Zalal fight, where he was just following Zalal, not cutting off the cage, no lateral movement. It's kind of just a new version of Calvin Kattar who's constantly doing his best Marlon Vera impression. But even if you compare how Murphy fought Emmett and how Zalal fought Kattar, it's completely different. Even if the opponents are very different, I think Emmett's a stronger and better opponent. And I thought that Murphy did have a better performance against Emmett than Kattar did, than Zalal did against Kattar. People talk about Murphy making the Emmett fight a snoozer, and that is somewhat true. But one difference is that when Murphy would get trapped up against the cage and Josh Emmett would be wailing some overhands, Lerone Murphy would grit down and swing back at every point of that fight. Anytime that happened, and anytime he would get trapped up against the cage, he would be throwing back. Whereas when Calvin Kattar caught Zalal against the cage, Zalal would be like turning, he'd be like going away from the action, trying to get back into space instantly. And Kattar only really throws straight punches, so it's always they're a lot easier to slip and circle off against. But Emmett's always throwing these massive looping punches, so if he gets Youssef Zalal into that position, he's going to be able to land it and maybe even drop him at one point of the fight. Another difference is that Murphy, when he gets caught in those positions, he can block some of those looping punches because he has constantly got a high guard. Even if you remember the Aaron Pico fight, his method of defense is really moving his high guard around, and it's actually really effective, especially against a guy who throws a lot of hooks like Josh Emmett. Whereas Zelal's defense is completely different, and he's like turning away, trying to get into space, and he's relying on his low guard and his reaction speed to get away from that. I think in Emmett versus Murphy, the part of the reason why he was able to get this win over Josh Emmett was also because when they were having that clash in the middle, he was landing elbows, he was landing knees, he was landing right hands over the top. He was doing visual damage on Josh Emmett. And Lerone was also pushing forward for a large portion of that fight. You may remember him just shying away from action, but he actually was moving forward a lot, doing a lot of front kicks to the body. He was moving forward with his jab, his stomp to the knee. I think Zelal's going to try those same moves, but on the back foot. Zalal really doesn't like moving forward. And even if he does have those same tools with the elbows and knees, they don't seem to do the same damage as Lerone Murphy. Lerone does a lot more feinting than Zalal does as well, and he also does a lot less outside footwork, and I think he moves a lot harder. I will say Zelal's knee up the middle could give Emmett a little bit of trouble, and Emmett does change levels when throwing a lot, so it could definitely land. But I think that the takedowns of Emmett might land in this fight. I think that if Keita is able to defend the takedowns of Yusuf Zalal, that Emmett's going to be able to defend those. And I think Emmett's going to be able to land at a lot of those points where they're caught up against the cage with those hooks. And that high guard of Yusuf Zalal isn't going to work as well as it did against Calvin Keita, because Calvin Keita throws mainly straight punches. I think that Emmett's going to drop him in the first round, and in those second rounds, outwork him in one of those rounds. And maybe third round, Zalal was able to outpoint Emmett. I just don't see that style of outpointing someone as a style that beats Josh Emmett, because people talk about Josh Emmett like he's terrible, but his footwork is actually really good. It's surprising how good his footwork is. So I think he's going to be able to get it done by 29-28 decision. Look, it could be wrong, and it's not like the safest bet that I've got on this card, but I do think he's going to get it done. Moving on to the most exciting fight on the card, we've got Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree. I'm going to go with Jiri to win this one. I will say Khalil has the type of style to stifle Jiri in this fight, but this prediction's mainly based off the improved head movement of Jiri Prochazka against Jamal Hill. But again, that could not work against Khalil Rountree, because one thing about Jamal Hill is that he's about half of the speed of Khalil Rountree, and his punches are a lot easier to read in time because of that speed difference. I just don't think that Khalil does the right things to set up and punish Jiri. One thing that Pereira did really well to finish Jiri, that Khalil has to do if he wants to finish Jiri, is using those straights and jabs to the body. With a guy with great head movement like Jiri, it's always going to be hard to catch him upstairs, but if you're constantly digging to the body, it makes you target that, and it makes Jiri second guess every time he's going to go to move his head, because he's going to think that he's going to get caught with a straight punch. Khalil doesn't really do that at all, and although I'm worried about Jiri exiting the pocket, because he still got caught by Jamal a number of times exiting the pocket, pulling his head straight out. And for Khalil, all of his explosiveness could catch Jiri doing so. I just don't really see it. I think that Yuri's going to be able to avoid those punches. He's going to be able to slip and rip in his own ones, just because he's going to have nothing else to worry about apart from those punches over the top. I do think, though, that Khalil's speed and distance closing ability early on in the fight is going to give a lot of troubles to Jiri. Similar to Rakic, how the size of Rakic and the speed of Rakic did give Jiri troubles early. And Khalil showed against Pereira that he can land a lot early into fights. And the most dangerous shots of Pereira would land just a little bit too short, but those ones are going to land on Jiri because he's a little bit shorter, probably a little bit slower too. If you see in that Pereira fight, though, Jiri wasn't enjoying the fight wasn't enjoying the pace that they fought at in the fight. He more enjoyed the Jamal Hill type pace where they're trudging forward, and Yuri's not going to do that. He's not going to give you those luxuries, and that caused Khalil to get tired in that fight with Pereira, where he wasn't really giving him that time and wasn't giving him that pace to fight at. As Jiri fights goes longer, he doesn't slow down, and he actually starts to land better as the fight goes along. And the thing is that Khalil's not that versatile when his opponents are moving that much. And specifically in the boxing, I can see Jiri landing later on in the fight as Khalil's explosiveness leaves him. Because once that explosiveness is gone for Khalil in those second and third rounds, he doesn't really have as much on the feet for Jiri to worry about. And he's actually quite predictable when it comes down to it without his explosiveness and speed, because he's constantly just going for straight punches. And I think that Yuri's going to be able to read that. Khalil's not a combination guy. He's not going to chase you down landing 3-shot combinations, trapping you against the fence. He's really a 2-shot type of guy. Throw a jab, throw a straight, or throw a jab, throw a leg kick. Like, it's very 1-shot at a time type style, and that's not going to work on Jiri later on in that fight. Especially since Yuri's not going to let Khalil go forward. I think the longer this fight goes, the more confident Yuri's going to get. And I think in the third round, Yuri's going to break Khalil, maybe getting a TKO win. Even a submission win I can see in this one. So I am going to be going with Jiri by third round finish. KO or submission's 50-50 for me. I would probably go submission just because it's going to pay a lot more. But I think it's going to be an absolute bloodbath for the first two rounds. I actually think Khalil's probably going to win the first two rounds due to the speed and explosiveness. But I think that Yuri's going to be able to bring it back and finish Khalil in that third round. Now, moving on to the co-main event of this fight card, we've got Merab Dvalishvili versus Cory Sandhagen. I'm going to go with Merab by decision for this one. I think most people will be going for the same. But I want to pick Cory so bad. Like, I really do think that he has every single tool to win this fight. But the thing is that he just never puts those tools together. So I just can't. He's not proven to me why he can win this fight. He's shown me all the tools to win the fight, but he hasn't proven why he's going to win it. Just because he landed a flying knee on Frankie Edgar, or he landed a spinning wheel kick on Marlon Moraes doesn't mean that he's going to do that to everyone. And you'll notice since then he barely throws either of those techniques because they don't land that much. He's got all of these things. He's got the elbow that cut open Song Yadong and ended that fight. He's got the 50-50 transitions where he blows TJ Dillashaw's knee out, or he blows Davison Figueiredo's knee out. He's got all of these skills, but I just don't see him putting it all together against Merab Dvalishvili. The thing is about Merab is that you can have all of these game planning, you can have all of these things that you're going to do to him, but he just ends up tiring you out by round 2, at the end of round 2, and then he's just having his way with you. Every single fight this happens. There's not been a Merab fight where you go into it thinking he can't win a decision, and this is one of them. You can go into this fight and really, you can put some safe money on him winning a decision, just because Sandhagen's shown weaknesses in all the areas that Merab excels at. Sandhagen, although he pretends he's never got out-wrestled, he got out-wrestled by Aljamain Sterling. Sandhagen pretend that he's never got gassed out. He got gassed out against Umar Nurmagomedov. He even said he got gassed out in that fight. If you watch the round 4 and round 5 of that fight, he was so gassed out in those rounds. And coming into this fight, you can't show me all of these holes in Sandhagen's game and expect me to pick Sandhagen still to win this one. I think even though he's got all these weapons, he just can't do them on Merab. Merab's so good at avoiding everything like that. Let's pull out one of the but one of those highlight reel wins, or one of those unlikely wins. It'd be a flying knee. When have you seen Merab get caught by a flying knee? Never. When have you even seen him get caught by a knee? Never. Because you'll notice every single time he shoots, he's drawing one of these big reactions out. He's drawing a knee from O'Malley out so he can shoot on his unbalanced leg. He's very good at avoiding this. When he's out at range, he doesn't stay in the pocket for long. And if he's in the pocket, he's always all the way in. He's not going to get caught by that flying knee coming in because he's going to be all the way in by the time it comes there. If Sandhagen throws it out in the open, Merab's going to be 3.5 feet away. He's not going to get hit by that. It's really hard to pick a way where Sandhagen's going to win this fight. If you say the 50-50 and the leg locks, I just think that Merab, the only place in his ground game that he has to work on in this fight is that position. He's not going to get caught in that 50-50. He's not going to blow his knee out because that's sort of the only danger that Sandhagen presents on the ground to Merab. Maybe the Granby rolls pose some threat, but I don't see it. I don't see any of these methods of victory for Sandhagen. The only thing I see for Sandhagen is winning a decision. And we've seen time and time again that it seems very difficult for these guys to win decisions over Merab. I do think, though, Merab is a guy that you can beat by decision. People always talk about how you have to flatline KO Merab. I think that that's so unlikely to happen. I think Merab's in such good shape, and he's got such good knowledge of what hurts him, how people catch him, that I don't see him getting flatline KO'd in his entire career. I think when Merab loses, it's going to be by decision. But I think it's going to be an Umar Nurmagomedov that does it. I think it's going to be a Petr Yan that does it. I don't see Sandhagen being that guy, just because Sandhagen doesn't do enough in rounds to win rounds. He does a lot of stuff that can hurt you. He does a lot of stuff that can leave some marks on your face and do a lot of damage. But he doesn't have even though he's got these highlight reel moments, he doesn't win rounds like a Petr Yan does. He doesn't win rounds like Umar Nurmagomedov does. So I just don't see him winning this fight, just because people talk about all of these highlight reel moments that are going to KO Merab. They're just not going to KO Merab. And the thing is that people talk about how Sandhagen's more dangerous than O'Malley. But the thing is that all of these highlight reel techniques haven't proven to catch Merab before. We've never seen Merab get caught by a head kick. We've never seen Merab get caught by a spinning elbow coming in. So why is it going to start happening now? You can really answer this question in the comments section below. The reason why O'Malley was such a threat to Merab, and that's why a lot of people, including myself, picked O'Malley in their second fight to beat Merab, is because O'Malley poses that significant threat where he can flatline KO you if you run straight into his shots. Sandhagen does not have that. He's not going to flatline KO you from a punch ever. Ever. You will never see a Sandhagen flatline KO from a punch. I promise you. Because he just doesn't put that same sting on his shots. He doesn't have the same power on his shots. And think about every time you've seen Merab hurt. It's been from a counter left hook, in the crash, in the pocket, from a Henry Cejudo, from a Marlon Moraes, from these guys with really fast twitch muscle fibers who have got short extension times, really short hooks and tight hooks that meet Merab in the crash. Sandhagen's not going to be able to do that. That's the thing. That's the problem I see in this fight. I see ways that Sandhagen can win the fight. I can see him rolling for leg locks and getting up from them. But I just don't see him tying everything together. I don't see him timing like a spinning wheel kick in the first round, hurting Merab, winning him that first round, even if he gets dominated for the rest of the round. And then I don't see in that second round him going for the 50-50, blowing out Merab's knee, and then losing the rest of the round, but having a close heel hook so they give him the round. I don't see him winning the third round due to all the stance switches and all of this cool jittery stuff that Sandhagen does. I don't see that. I don't see him winning these rounds, doing the stuff that people think he can do. I will give him one method of victory, though. I think the only way, and if I'm Sandhagen, this is the only way I'm trying to win this fight. It's just by damage. It's by putting marks on Merab's face. One thing about Cory, he does have these elbows up close. He does have the knees up close, to the body, not to the face. He does have these nasty weapons that put some visual damage onto you. So I think if I'm Sandhagen, those are... I think I just spat all over my camera. Yeah, I did. But those are the tools that Sandhagen should be using. I just don't think he's going to use those tools. I think in the crash where Merab enters into range, Sandhagen should be going for a straight elbow like the one he did against Song Yadong. He should be going for that. Itchy nose. Sorry, my bad. But that's what Sandhagen should be going for, but he's not. Everyone in the build-up has been saying, the flying knees, man, the spinning wheel kicks, man, that's what's going to land. The 50-50s and the leg locks. He's going to get that leg lock. That's not what's going to happen. He's not going to finish Merab. I'm actually confident he's not going to finish Merab. But he can win a decision. He can win a damage-based decision. If you watch Merab fights, all it takes is 2 elbows in many rounds and his opponent wins the fight. In the third round against Henry Cejudo lands one really good shot. He wins the fight. In the Jose Aldo fight, if Jose Aldo lands one good shot, he wins the fight. In the first Sean O'Malley fight, one good shot, he wins the fight. Umar Nurmagomedov fight, one good shot, he wins the third round. Like, there's all of these instances where people are close to winning decisions. So that's why I think it's kind of ridiculous when people say that you have to flatline KO Merab. I don't think you do. I think you just have to put some damage onto Merab. And with the game plan that I've been seeing Cory go out there with with the game plan of, oh, I have to sleep this guy if I want to win this fight. That's a bad game plan. You have to put damage on this guy. You have to win rounds. And I don't think it's as tall of a task as people think. The last thing I'm going to say about this matchup is, I used to always talk about the cardio of Sandhagen. I think the cardio when Sandhagen fought against TJ Dillashaw, I think he had fantastic cardio. I think he was probably the best in the division at that point. But now, he's put on a lot of size. If you haven't noticed, he's actually quite jacked now, and he's actually filled his frame out quite a lot. He's a very big dude now. And with that came a decrease in his cardio. Watch the Umar Nurmagomedov fight back. He pretends and he says that he moved a lot in that fight, and that's why he got gassed out. He's moved a lot more in other fights before. He's defended, well, not defended more takedowns, but he's moved a lot more. He's done more elusive footwork in a lot more fights. And he got way more gassed out in that Umar fight. Why? Because he's huge now compared to what he used to be. And I think in this fight, he's going to get gassed out trying to highlight real flatline KO Merab in those first 2 rounds. And then it's probably going to be a close first 2 rounds. He's going to be rolling for legs. He's going to be landing some knees. He's going to be going for some elbows. He's going to be throwing spinning wheel kicks. He's going to be doing these highlight reel techniques. But then I think as the fight goes along, I think he's going to win the fight. And I think he's going to win. I think that Merab is going to win by decision. I really do want to pick Sandhagen, though. That's my problem with this fight. Like, I've been talking about this fight for, 9 minutes now. And I just can't, escape the feeling that I think Sandhagen's going to win. But I don't have any justification to why I think he's going to win. I can say, I think he's going to change his game plan up completely. I think he's going to throw elbows and knees when Merab enters into range. I think he's going to throw a lot of body kicks and a lot of body teeps, trying to hurt the body of Merab and then throw a head kick once around. I can't say he's going to do that because he's never fought like that. But if he fights like that, I always think this, people have the skills to beat Merab. They just don't have the cardio and they don't have the right game plan to do it. And I don't think Cory's got the right game plan to do it. I hate to say it because I want to see Cory win this one. And I'm gonna have to pick Merab by 48-47 decision like usual. It's a bit of a shame picking that because I do think that Cory's got the skills, but I think Merab's going to get done by 48-47 decision. Now, moving on to the main event though, we've got Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, the rematch. I'm going to go with Magomed Ankalaev by round 2 ground and pound TKO. I hope it doesn't happen, but I just can't see Pereira winning this one. And to be honest, I think that when we see fights like this where it's a close fight and the champion loses their belt and they come in with an immediate rematch against the younger guy, it almost never goes well and it almost never ends up as the same result. Usually when we see like a Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili, the first fight's close, but then the second fight is much more dominant. I think that this is going to be the same in this fight. One thing I will mention though is that I think that Pereira, people underestimate how well he did in that last fight. I thought, rewatching it, I thought that he did actually much better than I thought watching it live. Watching it live, I thought Magomed Ankalaev won at 4-1, maybe even 5-0. But then rewatching, I thought it was a 48-47, pretty close decision. The last round could have been going to Pereira as well, but it was literally just the knees to the thigh that won it for Ankalaev. But coming into this fight, I think that Ankalaev is going to be much more confident. He's going to know that he can take the shots of Pereira. He's going to have like a bit more of an ironed out tactic. When he was coming up, he must have been looking at Pereira thinking, oh damn, I think I can beat this guy, but he's shutting off everyone's lights. He could do that to me. Whereas now he's coming in with the mindset of, damn, I can probably shut this guy's lights off. I was the one that hurt him in the fight because Magomed really didn't get hurt by anything in that fight. Talking about the technique, though, of these two guys and what things I think will work, I think that Magomed's style was always going to present and pose a lot of problems for Alex Pereira. Alex, he really does thrive on people that throw a lot of looping punches, the people that are a little bit more careless with their defense, people who are more active on the feet as well. He also does better against orthodox than southpaw fighters. We've seen that time and time again. But I think Magomed's style is just like that crux to Pereira, that style that's built for beating Pereira. Because Magomed's got that style of like the lead hand fighting, moving up and down constantly, making it very difficult for you to realize when he's throwing his lead hand out. It actually makes it very difficult for you to land your lead hand as well. None of the other light heavyweights have that same style. Magomed probably is the best hand fighter at light heavyweight, and for a guy with the left hook of doom like Pereira, that hand fighting really does make a difference in range finding and making sure that you're not getting caught by that left hook. But the lead hand was void due to that hand fighting and due to the footwork as well of Magomed Ankalaev. Magomed's footwork is really deceptively fast and he has very good outside movement, always moving to the correct side as well. He's very technical. It's a weird thing with Magomed because he's from Dagestan and most of the people from that region are very good wrestlers, but Magomed's almost got that same style of wrestling but like transformed into the striking. It's a weird way of putting it, where it's a very risk-averse style. He doesn't get caught much. He doesn't get hit clean at all. And he does a lot of things that are very, very basic, but he does it very, very well. The things that Pereira did against, like, Jiri Prochazka, I was talking about this earlier in the video, where Pereira, one of his main techniques and one of his main things to set up his left hook is that body straight. But the thing is that in the orthodox to southpaw style, he wasn't really able to land that on the faster southpaw who would have been able to catch him whilst he was doing that. And the thing is that Ankalaev actually started doing those same weapons back to Pereira because he was much faster than Pereira and it was difficult for Pereira to catch him in those exchanges. The body straight that Pereira loves to set up his left hook with is literally void in this matchup, and Ankalaev seemed to be able to land that on him every single time. Another one of Pereira's best weapons is that low kick. Again, against these southpaws, it's just not as effective. Against Khalil, it worked here and there just because Khalil really didn't do a good job of avoiding those kicks, whereas the footwork of Ankalaev, the backwards footwork, really stopped Pereira from being able to land those kicks on Ankalaev. And the thing is that people talk about Ankalaev having really weak shins, but the thing is that the only reason why he was getting really weakened against Jan Blachowicz is because Jan was going shin to shin with Magomed Ankalaev, and he just had like tougher shins than him. Whereas Ankalaev, whereas Pereira, he was doing outside low kicks compared to inside low kicks, which were the ones that actually hurt Ankalaev. And Ankalaev was able to deal with those outside low kicks. It really didn't seem to hinder his movement at all. It didn't seem to affect him at one point. I didn't even see him take a back step from those kicks. So every single weapon that Pereira has, I can see Magomed having an answer for it. And the thing is that what Pereira did really well in that last fight was stopping those takedowns. And just the thing is, I don't see him stopping those takedowns to the same effectiveness in this fight. I don't see it happening this time just because Magomed's going to be able to make those adjustments on how to land and secure those takedowns easier, how to set them up a little bit better. Whereas Pereira's not really going to have more stuff that he can do better in his grappling. Maybe getting off the cage quicker is the biggest thing. But in getting off the cage quicker, you've got a lot more things to think about. You've got to think about the exit of getting off the cage. So I just see that there's too many things for Pereira to fix in this fight, and there's only really things for Magomed to improve on. One thing is that if Pereira was really coming into the last fight at 40% and his boxing really was that much slower, I could see him having a lot more success this time out if he's able to get that boxing going. But he usually gets that boxing going with those body shots, and I don't see him landing those on Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev is going to be able to dominate the early rounds. Really, I think Pereira is going to push forward a lot more in this first 2 rounds of their fight. But I think Ankalaev's going to drop him. The straight punches beat the looping punches 9 out of 10 times, especially when they're as fast as Magomed Ankalaev's. So I really think that Pereira is going to have some troubles in this one. I think that he's going to get caught earlier in this fight just because he's going to be a bit more on the front foot. And then once he's gotten caught earlier, I think he's going to be a bit more hesitant. And I think that those takedowns are going to come easily for Magomed Ankalaev. I think that the one thing I noticed about the takedowns he was really shooting for clinches more than he was shooting for takedowns. He wasn't shooting low on his shots. And I think that that's the main adjustment that he has to make against Alex Pereira. Although he has to be worried about shooting straight into a knee, I think he's going to be able to shoot outside, grab the leg, maybe go for chaining some takedowns together because he really didn't do that last time out. And I think he's going to be able to get Alex Pereira down in this fight. I think he could go for a submission, but I think he's going to get a ground and pound TKO, maybe gets into mount. Alex Pereira turns onto his back, tries to shrimp up and get up, but then he just gets pounded out from the backside, and I think he's going to get... Oh, that sounded so bad. I hope no one's watched this far into the video to hear that, but... I think that he's going to be able to get a ground and pound TKO on Alex Pereira in the fight. Let me know what you think of this video in the comment section below. Who do you think will win the main, co-main, and feature fight of this card? And as always, if you have any advice or feedback, leave it in the comment section below, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.